Welcome back to the Midnight Tapes. Get comfortable. Turn the lights down low. Pull the blanket up. Let the room grow quiet. And let the rain settle in around you. Tonight, every tape I have for you belongs to the same hour. Not midnight, not just after dark. Not the hour when the streets still remember people. These stories all happen between 3 and 4 in the morning. The old hour, the dead hour, the hour you wake into without knowing why, with your heart already moving a little too fast and the house around you holding its breath. Some people say it is the time when the fewest minds are awake. Some say it is when grief, memory, and fear have the least resistance. Others do not give it a name at all. They simply know that something changes then. The rooms feel deeper. Hallways seem longer. Every small sound asks to be explained. And clocks, for 1 hour, feel less like machines and more like witnesses. You do not have to stay awake for all of this. You can let your eyes close whenever they want to. The rain will keep going. I will keep reading. You are safe here. The door is locked. The dark is just the dark. Just do not look too long at the clock. Let us begin. The glass of water. I have always been a heavy sleeper. The kind of person who could sleep through thunder, sirens, people talking in the next room, even my own alarm if I was tired enough. Once I was down, I stayed down until morning. That was one of the few things I trusted about myself. Sleep, for me, was a clean disappearance. I would close my eyes in one world and open them in another, with nothing in between. So the first time I woke at 3 in the morning, completely awake and sitting halfway up in bed, it scared me more than it should have. There was no loud noise, no dream trailing after me, no feeling of falling. I did not wake the way you wake from a nightmare, gasping and sweating. I simply opened my eyes as if someone had said my name clearly from very close by, although the room was silent. The house was still. Not quiet in the ordinary way, but still in a way that felt deliberate. The refrigerator downstairs was not humming. The heating had not clicked on. Even the old wooden beams, which usually settled and ticked through the night, seemed to have stopped moving. My room was dark except for the thin blue line of moonlight between the curtains. And in that blue light, I saw something on my nightstand that had not been there when I went to bed. A glass of water. It stood close to the edge, exactly where my hand would find it if I reached without looking. Full to the rim, clear, cold enough that tiny beads of condensation had formed on the outside and begun to slide down onto the wood beneath it. I remember staring at it for a long time, not because a glass of water is frightening, but because I knew with absolute certainty that I had not brought it there. I never took water to bed. I never liked the way it tasted after sitting out. I lived alone. I had locked the doors before going upstairs. The windows were latched. There was nobody in the house but me. The easiest explanation was that I had done it myself and forgotten. Maybe I had come downstairs half asleep. Maybe I had filled the glass, carried it up, set it down, gone back to bed, and then woken again. People sleepwalk. People do strange things when they are exhausted. I had been working long days then, and I wanted a normal answer badly enough that I accepted it. I drank the water. It was cold, colder than it should have been after any time beside my bed. Tasted faintly sweet though that may have been my imagination. Then I set the empty glass down and went back to sleep. In the morning, I found the glass still there, dry inside, with a perfect ring of moisture on the nightstand beneath it. I told myself to forget it. The next night, at exactly 3, I woke again. No sound, no dream, just my eyes open in the dark and my body alert, as if it had been waiting for the hour. I turned my head before I even understood why. There was another glass of water on the nightstand, full, cold, placed in the same spot. That second night, I did not drink it right away. I sat there listening. I listened for footsteps in the hall, for the floorboards outside my room, for the soft closing of a cabinet downstairs. Nothing moved. Whoever had placed it there had done so without making a single sound, and somehow had known the exact moment I would wake. When I returned to the bedroom, the glass was still waiting. I poured it into the bathroom sink. I watched it go down the drain. Then I put the empty glass in the hallway, shut my bedroom door, and pushed a chair under the handle like a child. At 3 the next morning, I woke to the same silence and found the glass back on my nightstand, full again. That was when fear stopped being sudden and became something slow. The glass kept coming, always at 3, always full, always cold, always within reach. After a while, the strangest part was not fear. It was the kindness of it. That sounds wrong, I know, but there was something almost caring about the placement, the neatness, the way it appeared exactly when my throat was dry and my mouth tasted stale from sleep. It felt like a small service performed by something that lived in my home and wanted me to accept its help. That made it worse, because I began to feel rude for refusing. After 2 weeks, I tried an experiment. Before bed, I filled a glass myself from the kitchen tap. I carried it upstairs. I placed it on the far side of the room on my dresser. I wanted to see whether it was only the act that mattered. Maybe whatever was happening needed a glass of water nearby. Maybe I could control it by leaving one out. At 3, I woke. My glass was still on the dresser, untouched, but on the nightstand, close enough for my sleeping hand to find, was a fresh glass of water, colder than mine, clearer than mine, beating in the dark. That was the first time I understood something important. It was not bringing me water because I needed water. It wanted me to drink from its glass. Once I understood that, I began to notice other things. My lips would be dry every time I woke, no matter how much water I drank before bed. My tongue felt thick. My throat felt tight. By morning, if I resisted all night, I would wake with a headache and a thirst so sharp it felt like hunger. The full glass would still be waiting, untouched, innocent, covered in condensation. A few times in that half second after waking, before memory returned, I almost reached for it. My hand would move by itself, fingers opening, and I would catch myself just in time. Once I woke with the glass already in my hand, lifted halfway toward my mouth. I do not remember picking it up. I sat there trembling, holding it, while the water trembled too but never spilled. I put it down. From somewhere in the house below me, very softly, something sighed. I moved out after that, or I tried to. The first apartment I rented was small, bright, on the third floor of a building with thin walls and noisy neighbors. I slept there the first night with relief. There were people around me, cars outside, pipes clanking, normal sounds. I remember thinking I had escaped a haunted house, which was a childish thought, but a comforting one. 3. I woke. There was a glass of water on the floor beside the mattress, because I had not yet bought a nightstand. Full, cold, waiting. I am tired now. That is the part one hates admitting. I am so tired of waking thirsty, so tired of the refusal. I have started to wonder what would happen if I drank. Maybe nothing. Maybe the first glass was harmless. Maybe all this fear is something I built around a kindness I was too frightened to accept. But I do not believe that, because 2 nights ago, I stayed awake until 3. I sat with the lights on, with every lamp burning, staring at the empty nightstand. I did not blink when the hour came. I watched the numbers change. For one moment, the room went very cold. Then the glass was there. And this time, in the condensation on the side, written by a fingertip dragged through the moisture, were 2 small words. Drink, please. The neighbor who waves. My apartment used to face another building across a narrow courtyard. It was one of those old city blocks where nobody really has privacy, only the shared agreement to pretend they do. Our windows looked straight into each other. If the lights were on across the way, I could see the shape of rooms, bookshelves, kitchen tables, coats hanging by doors. I never stared, and I do not think anyone stared at me. We all just existed in little boxes of light stacked across from one another. The apartment directly opposite mine belonged to an older woman named Mrs. Halden. I learned her name from the mailboxes downstairs, not from conversation. We never spoke properly, but for almost a year we had a kind of routine. In the evenings, when I came home from work and opened my curtains, she would sometimes be at her window watering a plant or adjusting the lace curtain. If she saw me, she would raise her hand. I would raise mine, a small wave, nothing more. There was something gentle about it. It made the building feel less lonely. Then one morning there was a moving truck. I raised my hand. She did not wave back. The apartment stayed empty after that. A sign appeared in the window, for rent. Then the sign faded at the edges. Weeks passed, then months. Dust gathered on the inside of the glass. In daylight I could see bare floors, white walls, no furniture. The vase was gone. The curtains were gone. At night, the windows were black. The waving began in January. It was a bad winter. I was not sleeping well. I kept waking between 3 and 3:30, not from dreams but from that thick, sour feeling of being watched. At first I blamed the cold or stress or the radiator banging in the wall. But the 3rd or 4th night it happened, I got out of bed for water and passed my living room window. Across the courtyard, in the dark, empty apartment, Mrs. Halden was standing at her old window. She lifted her hand and waved. I froze. She looked exactly as she had before. Silver hair pinned back, pale cardigan, thin arm moving slowly behind the glass. But behind her there was no warm room, no yellow lamp, no table, no pictures. Only darkness and the faint reflection of the courtyard. My first thought was not ghost. My first thought was that someone had moved in and I had not noticed. Someone who resembled her. Someone elderly. Someone with the same habit. It was flimsy, but the mind reaches for flimsy things before it reaches for horror. I stepped back from the window without waving. The next morning I checked. The sign was still there. The apartment was empty. I could see straight through it from one window to the next. Bare floor, empty walls, no curtains, no person. At 3:15 the following night, I woke with the taste of metal in my mouth and the absolute knowledge that she was at the window. I did not want to look. That was the worst thing. I knew that if I kept lying there, I might be safe. I knew that nothing in the world required me to get up and cross the room. And yet my body felt pulled toward the window, not violently, but politely, like someone had been waiting long enough that ignoring them had become rude. I got up. She was there, waving, the same slow, friendly wave, not frantic, not threatening, just patient. I kept my hands at my sides. I bought heavier curtains. Then I taped cardboard over the glass. That helped for one night. The second night at 3:15, I woke to a faint sound. Took me a minute to identify it. Knuckles tapping gently on glass. Not my glass, her glass. From across the courtyard. Tap, tap, tap. I lay in bed, sweating under the blanket, listening to that soft tapping travel through the dark between buildings. When morning came, I tore the cardboard down. I do not know why. Maybe because if something is going to stand outside your life and wave at you every night, it is somehow worse not to see it. After that, I began to notice changes. At first, she stood at her window. Then, night by night, she seemed closer to the glass. Her face became clearer. Her hand pressed flatter against the pane. The wave slowed. It was no longer greeting me exactly. It was asking. One night, her lips moved. I could not hear her through the glass and the courtyard, but I could see the shape of the words. It looked like she was saying, "Come here." I called the landlord and asked about the empty apartment across from mine. He said it had been vacant since Mrs. Halden moved. When I asked where she had moved to, he paused long enough for me to regret the question. He told me she had died 2 months earlier. Not in the apartment, in a nursing home outside the city. Peacefully, he said, in her sleep. I asked whether her family had taken everything. He said yes. Then he asked why I wanted to know. I told him no reason. The last night I lived there was the only night I waved back. I did not plan to. I had already signed a lease for another place. Boxes were stacked around my apartment. The curtains were open because I had been taking down the rods. I fell asleep on the mattress on the floor and woke at 3:15 with tears on my face, though I had not been dreaming. She was there. This time her apartment was not dark. It glowed with the old yellow warmth I remembered. The table was back. The vase was back. The lace curtains hung on either side of the window. Mrs. Halden stood in the center of it all, smiling gently, waving as if nothing had changed, as if she had only been waiting for me to stop being impolite. I was exhausted. More than frightened, I was exhausted. There is only so long you can refuse a small gesture before the refusal becomes the thing that breaks you. so I raised my hand. I waved back. The change was instant. She stopped moving. Her hand lowered to her side. The smile did not vanish, but it sharpened, becoming less like warmth and more like recognition. Then she lifted one finger and pointed, not at me, past me, toward my apartment door. A second later, someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. The sound came from inside the hallway, directly outside my door. The knocking came again. 3 slow knocks. I left the next day without sleeping. I gave away the furniture I could not carry. I did not get my deposit back. I did not care. Now I keep my curtains closed no matter where I live. I do not wave at strangers in windows. I do not wave back at children in cars, at reflections, at old women on balconies after dark. That sounds cruel, maybe, but a wave is not always just a wave. Sometimes it is permission. Sometimes it tells the thing on the other side, yes, I see you. Yes, you can come over. The baby monitor. When our daughter was born, the house changed into a place made of listening. Before her, I had thought of silence as empty. After her, silence became something I examined. Was she breathing? Was she stirring? Was that little sound from the nursery or from the pipes? New parents learn a new kind of hearing. You sleep lightly. You wake before the cry. You become tuned to the smallest shift in the air. Her name is Ellie. She was 2 months old when it started. That night, I woke at 3 to singing. For a few seconds, I did not understand where I was. The room was black. My wife was asleep beside me, turned toward the wall, one hand tucked under her cheek. The singing came from the monitor speaker on my nightstand. It was soft, a woman's voice, low and gentle and close to the microphone. A lullaby, not one I knew, not the usual songs people sing to babies. It had a simple melody, almost too simple, the kind of tune that feels like you have heard it before even when you have not. The notes rose and fell slowly, over and over, as if the singer had no need to breathe. My first sleepy thought was that my wife had gone to the nursery and come back without waking me. Then I looked at her sleeping shape beside me and felt the cold begin at the back of my neck. There was a woman's voice in my daughter's room. I grabbed the monitor. The screen showed Ellie's crib from above. She was awake. I could see her eyes open, shining pale in the infrared. She was not crying. She was not frightened. She lay perfectly still, looking upward at a point just beyond the camera's view. The singing continued. Something was leaning over the crib. I could not see it. I could only see the effect of it. Ellie's gaze fixed above her, the blanket shifting slightly as if air moved over it. A shadow at the top edge of the screen where there should have been only ceiling. I ran. I do not remember crossing the hallway. I remember my hand hitting the nursery door so hard it bounced against the wall. The singing stopped the instant the door opened. The room was empty. Ellie lay in her crib, calm and awake, looking not at me but at the ceiling above her. Her mouth made a little shape, almost like a smile. The monitor sat on the shelf where we had placed it. The window was locked. The closet was empty. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. I had heard it once, and already it had lodged in me. For a while, we convinced ourselves it was interference. Another monitor nearby, a neighbor's device, radio bleed. The internet is full of explanations if you are desperate enough. We changed channels. We reset the monitor. We moved it farther from the window. We even bought a new one. For 4 nights, nothing happened. Then, at 3, the new monitor began to sing. This time, my wife woke too. We lay there frozen, side by side, listening to that gentle woman's voice float through the tiny speaker. My wife gripped my wrist so hard it hurt. On the screen, Ellie was awake again, calm again, looking upward again. The camera angle was slightly different with the new monitor. It showed more of the room, including the rocking chair in the corner. The rocking chair was moving, slowly, forward and back, forward and back. No one was sitting in it. I went to the nursery again, but slower this time. Some part of me was afraid that if I rushed, I would catch the singer there. Another part was more afraid that I would not. I opened the door. The rocking chair stopped. The room was empty. After that, we stopped using the monitor at night. We moved Ellie's crib into our bedroom. For 2 weeks, she slept beside us, and nothing happened. No singing, no rocking chair, no strange waking at 3. We began to breathe again. Then one night, from the nursery down the hall, where there was no baby and no monitor plugged in, the lullaby began. It was not coming through a speaker anymore. It was in the house. My wife started crying. I got up and stood in the hallway. The sound came from behind the closed nursery door, soft and patient, as though someone was sitting in the dark room singing to an empty crib. I did not open the door. I stood there until it stopped. In the morning, the rocking chair had been moved. It faced the crib, although my wife swore she had left it facing the window. On the seat was one of Ellie's blankets, folded into a neat square. We put the house up for sale the next month, so we stayed longer than we should have. The last incident happened a week before we moved. Ellie had begun to sleep through the night. We had stopped using monitors completely. Her crib was still in our room. I woke at 3 because she was laughing, not crying, laughing, a soft, delighted baby laugh. She was lying on her back, looking toward the bedroom doorway. In the hallway beyond it, I heard the lullaby, very quiet, barely more than breath. Then the door, which I knew I had closed, opened wider by a few inches. My wife woke and whispered my name. I got out of bed, crossed the room, and shut the door. Then I locked it. We had installed a lock on our bedroom door by then, something I used to feel ridiculous about. The moment the lock clicked, the singing stopped. From the other side of the door, a woman's voice whispered something, not through a monitor, not distorted, right there in the hall. Please, just that one word. Please. We left before sunrise and did not sleep in that house again. She sings it while coloring. She sings it in the bath. She sings it when she is tired and close to sleep, her little voice following the same slow melody we never taught her. A few months ago, I asked her where she learned the song. She looked at me as if the answer were obvious. "The nice lady," she said. My wife went very still. I asked as gently as I could, "What nice lady?" "The one from my room," Ellie said. "The one who rocked the chair." I told her I did not remember that lady. Ellie frowned, not upset, just confused. "She said you didn't like her," she told me. "But she liked me. She said I was easy to hold." I could not speak. Then Ellie added, with the innocence of a child repeating something heard long ago, "She said she only wanted to stay until I could sing it by myself. She still sings it. And sometimes, when she reaches the last note, she looks toward the hallway and smiles at something I cannot see." The phone that rings once. It started the week I moved into the apartment on Evers Street. The place was cheap for a reason. 4th floor, no elevator, water stain in the bedroom ceiling, old pipes that knocked when anyone in the building showered. But it was mine. After a bad breakup and a worse year, having a door that locked behind me felt like enough. I had a mattress, a folding table, 2 chairs, and a phone that never stopped buzzing with messages I did not want to answer. The first night, at exactly 3 in the morning, the phone rang once. One sharp ring, then silence. I opened my eyes in the dark with my heart slamming. For a few seconds I thought it must have been part of a dream. Then the screen lit up on the floor beside the mattress. Missed call. The number was my own. I stared at it until the screen went black. I did not call back. The next night it happened again. 3 exactly. 1 ring. Silence. Missed call from my own number. The 3rd night, I stayed awake. I sat on the mattress with my phone in my hand, watching the time in the corner of the screen. 2:59, nothing. At 3 o'clock, the phone vibrated and rang once so violently I almost dropped it. The caller ID showed my name, my number, my contact photo, a picture I had taken years earlier and hated too much to change. By the time my thumb moved, the call had ended. "Could be the device," she said. So I updated the phone, reset the network settings, blocked my own number, which felt absurd. That night at 3, it rang once anyway. I turned it off the next night before bed. In the morning, there was a missed call logged at 3 o'clock. From my own number. Then I took out the SIM card. The phone was disconnected, useless, only a black rectangle with no service. At 3 it lit up and rang once. My own number appeared on the screen, even though that number no longer lived inside it. That was when I stopped looking for help. Help requires a problem that can be described without making people inch away from you. I could not describe this one, not honestly. For weeks I let it ring. Every night the same single sound. Sometimes I woke just before it, eyes opening at 2:59, body braced. Sometimes the ring woke me. Sometimes I dreamed of a telephone ringing in another room and opened my eyes to find it had happened here too. The call never lasted long enough to answer. 1 ring, then silence. It felt less like someone trying to reach me and more like someone checking whether I was still there. During the day, the apartment began to feel wrong. Not haunted in the usual way. No moving objects, no whispers, no cold spots, just wrong, like there was something ordinary in it I had failed to understand. I would stand in the kitchen and feel my attention slide toward the narrow cabinet above the refrigerator. I would pass the bathroom and feel sure, for half a second, that the mirror had reflected a figure behind me. I would sit at the folding table and realize I had been staring at the same patch of wall for 10 minutes, certain that something about it did not match the rest of the room. Then came the night I answered. I had not planned it. In fact, I had promised myself I never would. But fear changes texture when repeated. The first time something frightening happens, you want it to stop. The 100th time, you want it to become anything else, even worse, as long as it changes. I sat awake with the phone in both hands. I watched 257 become 258, then 259. My thumb hovered above the green icon. The room felt pressureless, as if all the air had been pulled into the walls. At 3 o'clock, the phone rang. I answered before the ring finished. Hello. Static. Not loud. Not the harsh static of a bad radio. A soft, breathing static, like a line opened very far away. Beneath it, I heard something that made my skin tighten. Breathing. Mine. Not just someone breathing. Breathing in the exact rhythm I was breathing. When I held my breath, it held too. When I exhaled, it exhaled with me. Then a voice spoke. My voice. Older, maybe. Hoarser, but mine. Finally, it said. I could not answer. I've been trying to reach you for so long, the voice said. Listen carefully. We do not have much time. There is something in the apartment you have not noticed yet. I hung up. I know that sounds cowardly. It was cowardly. It was also the only thing I could do. The voice had been too familiar. Not like a recording. Not like a trick. Like hearing your own thoughts from the wrong side of your skull. The phone did not ring again that night. In the morning, I almost convinced myself I had dreamed it. Then I found a new note in my call log. Answered call. 3 a.m. duration. 17 seconds. From my own number. I packed a bag and stayed with a friend for 2 nights. The phone did not ring there. I thought maybe it was the apartment after all and that I could leave. But on the 3rd morning, my friend asked why I had been talking in my sleep. He said I had sat up at 3 and whispered, I know, but he won't listen. I went back to Evers Street because all my things were there, because leases exist, because real life punishes you for believing in impossible things. The phone still rings once every night. I have never answered again. But the unanswered calls have changed. They used to end cleanly. Now, after the single ring, a voicemail appears. No missed call duration. No recorded number. Just a voicemail notification that disappears if I try to play it. Once, only once, I managed to hear the first second before it vanished. My voice said, behind the... Then nothing. Behind the what? Behind the wall? Behind the mirror? Behind the stove? Behind me? I do not know. I have searched the apartment badly, then carefully, then badly again. I have unscrewed outlet covers. I have emptied cabinets. I have looked under floorboards where floorboards could be lifted. I have checked the vents with a flashlight. I have found nothing. That is the worst part. Not the ringing. Not the voice. The warning. Something in my own voice is desperate to tell me about a thing I live beside every day and still cannot see. Every night at 3 the phone rings once. Every night I lie in the dark and let it stop. And every night, just before it rings, I hear the apartment settle around me with a small, satisfied sound, like something hiding itself a little better. The jogger. I used to run before dawn because the world felt honest then. There were no cars on the road, no voices, no errands, no people pretending not to be tired. Just the clean slap of my shoes on pavement, the white steam of my breath, and the quiet certainty that if I kept moving, the day could not catch me yet. I liked that hour. I liked the empty streets and the dark park at the edge of town, where the trees made a black wall against the sky. My route was a loop. For miles if I took the long way around the pond, 3 if I cut through the service road. I ran it nearly every morning for years. I knew which street lamp flickered in winter, which house had a dog that barked behind the fence, where the sidewalk cracked near the bus stop. At that hour, patterns matter. They keep you company. The first time I saw the other runner, it was 3:40. I remember the time because I had just checked my watch under the street lamp at the park entrance. It was cold, but dry. The kind of morning when sound carries too clearly. I was on the road that curves along the east side of the park when I saw a figure coming toward me. A man, running the opposite direction. That alone was unusual. I knew the early runners in town, and no one else came out that early on weekdays. He wore dark shorts, a gray hooded sweatshirt, and old white running shoes. His head was tilted slightly down so I could not see his face. His pace was steady, not fast, not slow, perfectly even. As we passed, I nodded. He did not react. No big deal. Some people run inside themselves. I kept going, finished my loop, went home, showered, and forgot about him until the next morning. Same time, same road, same man. He came toward me out of the dark with that same steady pace, head down, arms moving lightly at his sides. I nodded again, less because I expected a response and more because not nodding would have felt strange. Nothing. On the third morning, I noticed that we passed in exactly the same place. Not roughly, exactly, beside the bent speed limit sign near the drainage ditch. My watch read 3:40 again. That made me curious before it made me afraid. I began trying to see where he went after we passed. That was the first wrong thing. Not nearly empty. Empty. There was nowhere he could have turned. No driveway. No path, no tree thick enough to hide behind. The ditch was shallow and full of frost. He had passed me, and within 2 seconds he had ceased to exist. The next morning, I forced myself to look at him more carefully. His clothes were the same. Gray hoodie, dark shorts, white shoes. That bothered me because the weather had changed. It had rained all night, and the road was wet enough that my socks were soaked by the first mile. But his shoes were clean. His hoodie was dry. No rain darkened his shoulders. No mud marked his calves. He made no sound. I did not notice that all at once. Sound is something you assume until it is missing. My own shoes slapped the wet pavement. My breath sawed in my throat. A car hissed on the distant highway, but as the man approached, his feet touched down without impact. No rhythm, no scrape. His body moved like a runner, but the world did not acknowledge him. The morning after that, I said, "Hey," He passed without turning. His eyes were closed. That image is still the one that wakes me sometimes. Not blood, not a wound, not a monster's face, just a man's face, calm and slack and peaceful, eyes closed as if he were deeply asleep, while his body ran smoothly through the dark at the same steady pace. I stopped running that route. I did not see him for 3 mornings. On the 4th at 3:40, my watch beeped. That was impossible because I had not left early enough. I looked down. The display read 3:40. I must have misread the time when I left, I thought, or the watch had glitched. Then I looked up. He was coming toward me along the river path. Same clothes, same pace, head down, eyes closed. I stopped running. He did not. As he approached, the air around him seemed to carry a smell. Not rot, not sweat, something cold and mineral like rainwater trapped in concrete. I stepped off the path onto the grass. He passed within a foot of me, and for that 1 second I heard something after all. A whispering, not from his mouth, from his shoes. Each silent step brought a faint murmur, like many people speaking underwater. I turned and watched him continue down the path. I kept watching this time, refusing to blink. He ran under a street lamp into darkness, under another lamp, and then, between one pool of light and the next, he disappeared. After that, I began looking into accidents. I searched local archives, old news, running forums, missing persons posts. I found him after 3 nights of digging. His name was Daniel Cross, 36 years old, married, 2 children. He had been a marathon runner, the kind who posted routes and times and sunrise photos. 7 years earlier, he left his house before dawn for a training run and never came home. They found his body near the park drainage ditch, not far from the bent speed limit sign. Hit and run, the article said. The driver was never found. The article included a photo from a race. Gray hoodie, dark shorts, white shoes, eyes open in the picture, smiling at the finish line. I wish the story ended with me understanding that he was a ghost tied to the road where he died. It would be sad but simple. The problem is that he is not tied to that road. He is tied to something else, or someone. For a month, I stopped running before dawn. I slept badly, gained weight, felt trapped in my own skin. Then one morning I woke at 3:38 with my running clothes already on. I do not remember dressing. My shoes were tied. My keys were in my hand. The front door was open. Outside, far down the street, I saw a gray shape moving beneath the lamps. I locked the door and stayed inside until sunrise. Since then, I have seen him 3 more times. Once from my car, crossing an intersection at 3:40 with his eyes closed. Once reflected in the dark window of a closed pharmacy, running behind me when the sidewalk behind me was empty. Once in a dream that did not feel like a dream, where he ran beside me for miles without opening his eyes and whispered, without moving his mouth, "Do not let it catch your breath. I do not run anymore." But sometimes, at 3:40, I wake with my heart pounding and my legs aching as if I have been running in my sleep. There is mud on my shoes by the door. My fitness app shows distance I did not record. For miles. sometimes 6, once 13. The route is always a loop, and every loop crosses the same point at 3:40. I think Daniel is not running his old route. I think he is still trying to finish the run that something interrupted. I think the road, or the hour, or whatever lives inside that hour, does not let him stop. And I am starting to understand the thing that frightens me most. He is not running toward me. He is passing me, as if I am standing on the same road now. As if one morning soon I will not be going the opposite direction anymore. The light across the field. We lived in the country because my father hated neighbors. That was the joke he told everyone. Anyway, I like people fine, he would say, as long as they stay a mile away. My mother would roll her eyes, but she loved the quiet too. Our house sat at the end of a gravel drive, with fields on 3 sides and woods along the back. At night, the darkness there was enormous. Not the soft darkness of bedrooms or city streets, but a full black weight that pressed against the windows. I grew up with that darkness. I knew the sounds that belonged to it. Deer moving in the brush, wind through corn, owls, foxes, the distant cough of machinery from farms over the hill. Country dark is not silent, but it is honest. Every sound has an owner. The light did not. I was home from college that winter, sleeping in my old room at the back of the house. From my window, I could see across the field to the tree line, maybe half a mile away. The field was empty then, cut low after harvest, pale under frost when the moon was out. Beyond it, the woods rose dark and thick. The first night, I woke at 3 and went to the window without knowing why. At the far edge of the field, just in front of the trees, there was a light. A small warm light, yellow-orange, like a lantern. It hung at about chest height, not high enough to be a star, not low enough to be a reflection. There was no road there, no path, no reason for anyone to be standing at the edge of our woods at 3 in the morning holding a lantern. I watched it for several minutes. It did not sway. It did not flicker. It simply burned. Eventually, I went back to bed. In the morning, I told my father. He said it was probably hunters. When I reminded him that hunting at 3 in the morning with a lantern at the back of our property was not exactly normal, he shrugged and said people did stupid things. That was his answer for most of the world's mysteries. The next night, I woke at 3 again. The light was still there, but not at the tree line. It was in the field, only a little closer, maybe 30 yards, maybe less. Enough that I could tell myself I was mistaken the first night. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe distance in the dark plays tricks. By the third night, I could not tell myself that anymore. It had moved closer, not while I watched. That was important. It never moved while I watched. I would wake at 3, go to the window, and find it already in a new place, always nearer to the house than before. It stayed perfectly still until I went back to bed. By morning, it was gone. I began marking its position. On the 4th night, I used the old fence post near the field's edge as a reference. On the 5th, it had passed the low dip where rainwater collected. On the 6th, it was near the rusted harrow my father had never bothered to move. Each night it crossed a little more ground. Slow, patient, certain. It was a lantern, I became sure of that. The glow had the softness of flame behind glass, but whatever held it stayed behind the light. I could almost see a shape sometimes, a darker darkness directly beyond the glow. But whenever I leaned closer to the window, my breath fogged the glass and the shape disappeared. My father stopped dismissing it after the seventh night. He did not say he believed me. He only stood at my window at 3 with his arms crossed, staring out across the field. The light burned maybe 200 yards from the house by then. Could be somebody messing around, he said. Every night. He did not answer. The next day he walked the field with his shotgun broken open over one arm. Not because he expected to shoot anything, but because it made him feel like the kind of man who had answers. I went with him. We found no footprints, no tracks. The ground was soft in places, frosted in others. My boots left clear marks, his left deeper ones. Around the places where the light had been, there was nothing, except near the dip, where the grass seemed pressed outward in a perfect circle, as if something heavy had stood there without feet. That night my father stayed awake in the kitchen with coffee and the shotgun beside him. 3, I heard his chair scrape. I went downstairs and found him standing at the back window. The light was closer. He watched it without speaking for a long time. Then he stepped outside. I grabbed his arm. He shook me off. Not angry exactly, embarrassed. Men like my father would rather walk into danger than admit fear in front of their sons. He crossed the yard with a flashlight in one hand and the gun in the other. The porch light threw his shadow long behind him. Out in the field, the lantern waited. My father shouted, "This is private land." The light did not move. He walked 10 steps past the fence. The lantern went out. The darkness that rushed into its place seemed bigger than the light had been. My father's flashlight flicked across the empty field. He stood there for maybe 5 seconds. Then he turned and came back fast, almost running. He locked the back door. I had never seen him lock the back door before. "What happened?" I asked. He stood in the kitchen, breathing hard. "Nothing," he said, but he slept on the couch with the shotgun across his lap. After that, none of us joked about the country being quiet. The light kept coming. It became part of our lives in the way dread can become routine. Dinner, dishes, television, bed, wake at 3, check the light, measure how much closer it had come. The closer the light came, the more we could feel it. Not see it, feel it. The house grew colder at night. The windows fogged from the outside. The dogs stopped going into the back rooms. In the hour before 3, every digital clock in the house gained or lost minutes until, at exactly 3, they all agreed. One night, when the lantern had reached the old fence, my mother began crying in her sleep. She kept whispering, "Don't let him in." In the morning, she did not remember dreaming. She had dirt under her fingernails. The next night, the light was inside the yard, close enough that I could see the glass of the lantern. It was old, not a modern camping lantern. Something metal and blackened, with a handle arched over the top. The flame inside did not move though the wind bent the grass around it. Behind the glow there was a figure, but still not enough of one to name. Coat, maybe, a hand around the handle, a face hidden by the brightness it carried before itself. It stood just beyond the fence and waited. My father raised the shotgun from inside the kitchen and aimed through the glass. My mother whispered, "Don't." He fired. The window exploded inward. The sound punched the house. For a second, I saw sparks in the yard where the shot passed through the place the lantern had been. Then the light was gone. My father laughed once, a hard little sound. The laugh stopped when someone knocked on the back door. 3 slow knocks. The back door had been nailed shut. No one moved until morning. That was yesterday. Tonight, the light will reach the house. I know that the way you know weather in your bones. Across the field, then the fence, then the yard. There is nowhere else for it to go but the door. My father says we are staying together in the living room. He has loaded the shotgun again. My mother has packed bags and left them by the front entrance. The dog is already hiding. I am recording this while it is still daylight, while the field is just a field and the woods are only trees. In the sun, the whole thing feels almost impossible. That may be why these things choose night. They need the world to be soft before they press through it. I keep telling myself I will not look at 3. I keep telling myself that when the knock comes, I will not move. But I know the truth. When the hour arrives, the house will hold its breath. The light will bloom against the back windows. Something patient will stand at the door with its lantern held out in front of it. And one of us, maybe all of us, will feel very strongly that it has come a long way, that it would be rude not to answer. The recording app. My partner was the first person who told me I talked in my sleep. Not a word here and there. Not mumbling. Conversations. Then she stopped laughing. I noticed before she said anything. She would watch me at breakfast with a careful expression. She began going to bed later than I did. Sometimes I woke and found her sitting up beside me in the dark, looking frightened, though she always said she was fine. One morning I asked directly. She told me that I had been talking to someone. Like dreaming, I said. No, she said. Like answering. She described long pauses. My voice, low and sleepy, saying yes or no or I understand. Then silence, as if another person were speaking too quietly for her to hear. Then me again. She said the rhythm was what bothered her. It did not sound random. It sounded polite, turn-taking, a conversation with rules. I told her I would record it. I expected to be embarrassed. I expected to hear myself mumbling nonsense and put the whole thing to rest. I downloaded a sleep recording app, placed my phone on the nightstand, and went to bed feeling almost relieved to have a plan. The first recording was mostly ordinary. 6 hours of cloth shifting, distant traffic, our breathing, the apartment settling. The app marked a sound at 3:02. I tapped it while standing in the kitchen the next morning. My own voice came through the speaker, soft, thick with sleep. I don't know. Pause. No, she doesn't. A longer pause. I said I don't know. Then nothing for almost 20 seconds. Then my voice again, quieter. Yes. The recording continued with silence and breathing. My partner watched my face as I listened. I tried to smile. I said sleep was weird. People answer dream figures all the time. But the truth is, I did not sound like someone dreaming. I sounded awake. The next night I recorded again. At 3 o'clock my voice appeared. This time the pauses were shorter, more natural. I heard myself say, "I can try," and then after silence, "No, not tonight." Another pause. "Because she's awake." My partner went pale. We listened again with the volume turned all the way up. At first there was only room tone beneath my answers. The low hum of the apartment, car far away. But in one of the pauses, beneath everything, there was a sound neither of us had noticed the first time. A second voice, very faint, too low to understand. It was not my partner. It was not me. It sat under the recording like a person speaking from the far end of a hallway. We did not record the next night. My partner asked me not to. I agreed, and then lay awake until 2, exhausted and frightened. At some point I slept. In the morning, the phone was on the nightstand with the recording app open. I did not remember turning it on. There was a new file. My partner did not want to listen. I did. For the first hour, nothing. Then at 3, my voice said, "You came back." Pause. The second voice answered. This time we could hear it clearly enough to understand fragments. It was low, patient, neither male nor female in any simple way. It asked, "Do you trust me?" My sleeping voice said, "Yes." It asked, "Will you leave the window unlocked?" I said, "Yes." My partner stood up so quickly the chair scraped backward. On the recording, the voice asked, "Do you remember our deal?" My sleeping voice answered without hesitation, "Yes, I remember." The other voice said something we could not make out. Then I said, calm and certain, "I'm ready whenever you are." I have never hated my own voice as much as I did in that moment. It was not frightened. It was not confused. It knew. Some sleeping part of me knew exactly what was being discussed and had agreed to it long before my waking self arrived late and horrified. We checked the window. It was unlocked. I always locked it before bed. Always. We lived on the ground floor then, and the alley behind the building was narrow and dark. The lock was old but stiff. You had to lift the frame and push hard to latch it. I remembered doing it the night before. My partner remembered checking it. Still, in the morning it was unlocked. For a while, staying awake worked. Then, after 3 nights without real sleep, I lost time. I was sitting on the couch at 2:47 with coffee in my hand. The television was on low. My partner was beside me, fighting sleep. I remember the taste of burnt coffee. I remember checking the window lock from across the room and seeing it shut. Then it was 4:06. The coffee was cold. My partner was crying. The window was open. I asked what happened. She said I had stood up at 3 exactly. She said I walked to the window and unlocked it with my eyes closed. She said I spoke before anyone else did. I asked what I said. She would not tell me. Later, when she was asleep, I checked the recording app. There was a file from that night. I do not know how it started. I do not remember pressing anything. I put in headphones and listened alone. At 3, I heard myself stand. Footsteps. the soft click of the window latch, my partner's voice, small and terrified, saying my name. Then the other voice, clearer than ever, from very close to the phone. "Not long now," my sleeping voice answered. "I know. Did you prepare the room?" "Almost. Did you tell her?" "No." A pause. "Will that be a problem?" My voice laughed. "I do not laugh like that. I do not know anyone who laughs like that." It was tender and embarrassed, as if sharing a private joke. Then I said, "She won't remember enough to stop us." I tore the headphones out. That is the part people do not understand about being afraid of your own sleep. You cannot run far enough. You carry the door with you. Last week I checked the old app. There were recordings I had not made. Every night at 3, a new file. Some were only breathing. Some contained whispers too low to separate. In one, my sleeping voice repeated a sentence for almost 10 minutes. "The room is ready." I searched the apartment afterward. I did not know what room I meant. My place has 3 rooms if you count the bathroom. Nothing looked different. Nothing except the spare closet, which I had not opened in weeks. Inside, I found blankets folded on the floor, a bowl of water, a line of salt across the threshold, broken neatly in the middle, and on the wall, written in dust by a finger, one sentence: "You promised before you were born." I have not slept since finding it. Not properly. But sleep is not something you can refuse forever. It waits. It gathers weight. It stands behind your eyes with patient hands. Every morning, the window is unlocked. Even now, on the 3rd floor, where opening it would lead only to empty air. And sometimes, just before dawn, I wake from a few stolen minutes of sleep with my hand on the latch and a feeling of deep disappointment, as if I almost kept my word. The hour that skips. I want to tell you about an hour I have never lived through. That sounds impossible. I know it does. Time is the one thing we are all supposed to share, even when we waste it differently. 3 o'clock happens. Then 3:01, then 3:02. The world moves because it must. Clocks do not ask permission. Mine does, or something asks through it. It began with an old digital clock I bought at a thrift store. Big red numbers, fake with sides, the kind people used to keep on bedside tables before phones replaced everything. I bought it because I was trying not to sleep with my phone near me anymore. Too much scrolling, too much blue light, too many nights losing an hour to nothing and waking up tired. I plugged the clock in beside my bed and liked it immediately. The numbers were bright enough to read without lifting my head. There was comfort in seeing time as a simple fact. For the first week, nothing strange happened. Then I began waking at 2:59. Not every night at first. Once, then again 3 nights later, then twice in a row. I would open my eyes and see the red numbers glowing in the dark. 2:59. I would lie there, annoyed at being awake so close to the middle of the night, and watch the minute change. 3 o'clock. Then I would blink. The clock would read 4 o'clock. At first, I assumed I had fallen asleep. That is the obvious answer. People doze off without realizing it. A blink can become an hour, but it did not feel like sleep. There was no drifting, no dream, no sense of time passing. It was a cut, one frame to another, 3 to 4 o'clock, the room unchanged, my body in the same position, my eyes still open. The first few times I shrugged it off. Then it happened while I was sitting up. I had woken at 2:58 that night and felt, for no reason, that I should not lie down. So I sat against the headboard and stared at the clock. The room was cold. Rain tapped the window. I counted the seconds in my head. 2:59. I did not blink when it changed. 3 o'clock. The red numbers burned. Something pressed softly against my ears, as if the air had thickened. Then the clock read 4 o'clock. I was still sitting up. My hands were still folded in my lap. My eyes were dry from staring, but an hour had vanished. I checked my phone. 4 o'clock. The kitchen clock. 4 o'clock. The microwave. 4 o'clock. Every device agreed. The hour had happened for the world, just not for me. That should have been enough to make me leave the clock unplugged. Instead, I became obsessed. Wet feet. That was the first evidence that something happened during the missing hour. Before that, I could almost pretend I was simply absent, a victim of a glitch. But wet feet meant my body had been somewhere without me. The hotel carpet near the door was damp. In the bathroom sink, there were tiny grains of black dirt. I stopped sleeping alone after that. My partner, Mara, was patient longer than anyone else would have been. At first, she thought I was having panic attacks or dissociative episodes. She did not mock me. She watched the videos. She saw the static. She admitted she could not explain it. When I asked her to stay awake and watch me through the hour, she agreed. I still feel guilty for that. We prepared like scientists and children. Coffee, lamps on, camera in the corner. Mara in a chair beside the bed with a notebook. I lay down and promised I would try to stay awake. At 2:59, she squeezed my hand. The clock changed to 3 o'clock. Then it was 4 o'clock. Mara was no longer holding my hand. She was standing by the door with her back pressed against it, crying silently. The chair was overturned. The lamp on my side of the bed was broken. There was mud on the floor in a half circle around the bed. I asked what happened. She shook her head. "Mara," she said, "you were awake." I told her I did not remember. "I know," she said. I apparently sat up and spoke. Not to her. She wrote down only one sentence because after that she was too frightened to keep writing. "He keeps the hour because I cannot be trusted with it." I asked what that meant. She said she did not know. I asked what else I did. She looked at me with such pity that I wished I had not asked. Mara blocked me. She said I looked at her as if I had never seen her before. Then I asked her, in a voice that was mine but not mine, "Are you using this one?" That was when she started crying. At 4 o'clock, I lay back down, my eyes unfocused. I blinked and asked why she was by the door. Mara moved out 2 weeks later. I do not blame her. The hallway lights were out. She said I walked to the stairwell door and opened it, but beyond it there were no stairs, just darkness. Not dark stairs, not an unlit landing. Darkness like a room with no edges. She said voices came from inside, Many voices, all whispering at once. I stepped through. She grabbed my arm and pulled me back. I turned to her and said, "This is why he skips me." Then the stairwell was normal again. At 4 o'clock, I was back in bed. She never told me what she heard in the darkness. When I begged, she covered her ears like a child and said some hours are not meant to be overheard. After she left, I tried to force the issue alone. I tied one end of a rope around my waist and the other to the radiator. At 4 o'clock, the rope was untied and coiled neatly on the bed. I barricaded the door. At 4 o'clock, the barricade was stacked neatly in the hallway outside. I wrote messages on my arms in permanent marker. Do not leave. Who are you? What happens at 3? At 4 o'clock, the messages were gone. Not washed off. Gone with my skin clean beneath them, except for one word written on my palm in handwriting that was not mine. Borrowed. The worst morning was the one with the photograph. I woke at 4 o'clock holding an instant photo. I do not own an instant camera. In the picture, I was standing in my bedroom at night, facing the camera. My eyes were open. My mouth was open too, wider than seemed comfortable, as if I were laughing or screaming. Behind me, the clock read 3:33. In the background, where my closet door should have been, there was a hallway I had never seen before. Long, narrow, lit red, lined with doors. At the end of it stood someone wearing my face. Not me. Not exactly. It was taller, too thin, smiling. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "He is learning to keep more than the hour." I burned the picture in the kitchen sink. The smoke smelled like wet soil. That should horrify me. It does, but not as much as the thought of being present. Last week, Mara called me for the first time in months. She did not say hello. She said, "Do you still skip?" I said yes. She started crying. Then she told me she had woken at 3:17 the night before. Not skipped, woken. She was standing in her new apartment, in front of her locked bedroom door. From the other side, my voice was speaking softly. She lives 200 miles away. I asked what my voice said. Mara whispered, "It said you're getting better at opening doors." Then the line went quiet. I have unplugged every clock in the apartment except the old red one. I keep it because at least it tells me when to be afraid, or when to surrender. I am no longer sure there is a difference. It is 2:58 now. The rain is tapping the window. The room is still. The clock is bright enough to paint the walls red. At 3 o'clock, I will leave myself again. At 4 o'clock, I will come back. I hope I come back alone. The rain is still falling. You have made it through the tapes for tonight, or maybe you drifted somewhere in the dead hour and woke a little later with the feeling that part of the night had been folded away. That is all right. That is what these tapes are for. The stories are done now. There is nothing left but the storm, the dark, and the slow breathing of the room around you. Let your shoulders go heavy. Let your hands loosen. Let the clock become only a clock again. You are safe here. The door is locked. The dark is just the dark. And if there is an hour you do not remember, perhaps that is because some hours are kinder when they pass without us. Rest now. Sleep through it if you can. I will see you again next time after midnight.